Um, Welcome everybody. I'm Skip Alzheimer, and my webcam is acting very strange today because there's a bunch of light behind me because it suddenly got sunny. But we are watching some old 16mm films here at AV Geeks, and I'm happy that you guys are there to watch with us. That film that we just saw, Cobb Goes Fishing, is a columnist who was famous at the time going fishing. Um, this is before the internet, so yeah. Anyways, so behind me I've got a film queued up on the telecine, and we are going to watch that. This is about junior high, A Time for Change. Enjoy and learn.
Did you ever wonder why, when you've spent all of your time since kindergarten going to one type of school, that at a certain point in your education you are switched to a different type of school? Why don't they just add more rooms to the elementary school you're familiar with? A method of providing higher education might have its limits. But the change from elementary school involves more than simply spending your time in a different building. There's a different name for the school. There are different courses, different teaching methods, and different schedules for the day's activities. Why is just about everything in junior high so different? Why? The answer lies in you. You are different. No longer a child, not yet a grown-up. You are changing, leaving childhood, entering adulthood. The part of your life during the junior high years is a period of great change. Your type of schooling must change, too, to keep up with you. You will notice that your classmates change in different ways and at different rates. For example, let's look at Bill, and Jean, and Jim, and Ellen. Now, if you're a Bill, you're 6 inches taller than you were last year, and weigh in at 160 now. You're starting to shave, a sign that you're becoming a man in more ways than size. And you're studious. You act as grown-up as you look. You do your work at home and at school without too much pushing. But those long legs, which help you get places in a hurry, can be a nuisance when they bump into the furniture. On the other hand, if you're a Jean, you tip the scales at 80 pounds. You still wear your hair the way your mother combed it years ago. You may do all right when it comes to answering questions on paper, but you're too shy and unsure of yourself to speak up about anything, even when an opportunity presents itself. A Jim, on the other hand, has no trouble speaking up.
I found somebody's pencil on the floor. It's a yellow pencil with a red eraser. Whoever it belongs to may need it. Oh, is that your pencil, Jean?
Jim earns his reputation as the class pest, but he knows, as you know if you're a Jim, how awful it is to be practically no bigger than you were almost 2 years ago, still a kid, compared to Bill. At the opposite end of the scale in physical development is Ellen, already starting to look and act like a woman, trying out hairdos and lipsticks and fingernail polish. If you're an Ellen, you are quite at ease and confident of your place in the group. Suppose you had to select one of 4 types as typical of the junior high student. Which one would you select? Well, whichever you chose, you would be right, for all of them are typical of this junior high age. Why is there so much variation in what is typical? Well, because each person at this age is developing in several of the areas. For example, during this period of physical and social development, one may be in actual age 12, perhaps, while at the same time he is as well developed physically as many 13-year-olds, as poised and socially sure of himself as many 14-year-olds, and yet no better able to handle his emotions than an 11-year-old, and no more advanced mentally than a typical 10-year-old. The point is, when you think about how you're growing, you must think of how you're growing in each of these areas. Even though at any one moment you don't measure evenly in your development, you can see that the general direction for change in all of these areas is up. If your physical growth is progressing at an exasperatingly slow rate, it may be that your social growth is spurting ahead by leaps and bounds. Although you may grow slowly and steadily in some areas, you may grow rapidly and unevenly in others. This is true for all your friends. This fact accounts for the marked differences in physical appearance and development you see in your classmates. It accounts for a wide variation in attitudes. Some defiant, some cooperative, some lazy, some industrious, as each person reaches some temporary stage in his individual development. So it's not very realistic to compare yourself too unfavorably with someone else, to think that he is so much better than you are, when tomorrow or even an hour from now, that fellow may wish he were more like you in some ways. Of course, you will compare yourself with others. Young people are constantly studying their appearance, abilities, and limitations to see how they compare with their classmates. Sometimes it can be embarrassing to find that you are not conforming or doing things in the same way as the others. As a student in junior high, you will probably find that even though you want to be just like everybody else, you also are trying to be more independent.
Richard, you have a dental appointment today after school.
Oh, Mom, I've got ball practice today. How come you always make appointments for me without even asking me? Everybody else can decide what he wants to do and when. But me, won't forget it.
I'm sorry. Go cancel the appointment for today and make another one for Saturday.
Gee, thanks, Mom.
With adult privileges come adult responsibilities. One of these responsibilities is to keep appointments. Don't let other people down about what you say you'll do with them or for them. Making sensible decisions, what you buy for lunch, for example, is another of your responsibilities. Parents deserve consideration. You should not expect the privilege of enjoying the family recreation room if you're not ready to accept the responsibility of cleaning it up after you are through. On some things, like current styles or taste in music, you may wish to do your own thinking. However, on things which are harder to decide, like what is wrong or right, or making plans for your future, you will often want the help and advice of your parents. Do you ever worry about yourself, wondering if you're doing as well as you should, or whether people like you, or what people really think of you? Do you ever have moments when your problems are so tough you want to lash out at the world, or just have a good cry? If so, you are not alone. All of the boys and girls around you, whether they show it or not, know similar periods of uncertainty and confusion. Who am I? What kind of person do I want to be? How can I become the person I want to be? Who am I? Only you can answer that as you learn to appraise yourself, seeing yourself as you are without becoming self-conscious. Discovering yourself is accomplished partly through taking advantage of all the new and different experiences available to you at junior high. Partly through accepting the responsibilities as well as the privileges of growing up. And partly through talking your problems over with sympathetic adults who can help you to realize that your concern about your size or your looks or your personality or your social life or anything else which bothers you now may be only a part of a total picture. When the total picture comes into focus, you'll find that the answer to who am I usually goes something like this. I am a unique individual. There is nobody just like me in all the world. I am a person with some limitations I can do nothing about, so I shall accept them with good humor. I am a person with some abilities or characteristics I could improve on, and I will do my best to make those improvements. I am a person with many personality traits and abilities to be proud of. I shall respect those with less ability and help them to develop their own abilities. Who you are, what you want to become. Now is the time of change and self-discovery, this junior high age.
So you can see, Centron actually made that film, and it was distributed by McGraw-Hill. Centron also made films for Young American Films, which distributed stuff. So Centron was not only making films for themselves, they were making them for other distribution companies. Great film, though. I love, junior high is that, and middle school really is that kind of transitional insanity. So, all right, so here is a short film about Eddie Rickenbacker.
The greatest drama, written by you, the American people, and brought to you by the General Tire and Rubber Company, in cooperation with your friendly General Tire dealer. The greatest drama, the memorable living stories of the great among us.
This chapter, Ace of Aces, the story of Captain Eddie Rickenbacker. The place was Washington. It was December 1942. Captain Eddie Rickenbacker was relating one of the grimmest tales of the Second World War, the story of his 3 weeks adrift in a life raft in the Pacific Ocean.
Our prayers were answered. And if we hadn't had, or I hadn't had 7 witnesses, I wouldn't dare tell the story. For a seagull landed on my head and gave us food to sustain us for 2 days and sufficient bait through the use of its intestines in order that we may catch a couple of fish.
Afterwards, Secretary of War Stimson commented,
"Welcome home. I said it once before and I say it now again. The usual rules of fate do not apply to you."
Thank you, sir.
The rules of fate had never applied to Eddie Rickenbacker. Ever since the beginning in Columbus, Ohio, at the turn of the 20th century, Eddie had made his own rules. His family lived on the wrong side of the tracks. Grinding poverty produced a kid who was tough, stubborn, and rebellious. His father couldn't handle him, neither could his teachers. Neighbors predicted he would come to a bad end. Then his father died, and Eddie became breadwinner of the family. No more school. The boy found a job in a shop which produced those newfangled gasoline buggies. One day he read that 2 brothers named Wright had actually flown an airplane. They became his heroes. Perhaps he too might become an aviator. But first he had to learn all there was to know about cars. Eddie was 15 when he took his first automobile ride. The next step, automobile racing. Indianapolis, 1911, the first 500-mile race in history was beginning. Among the drivers entered was 21-year-old Eddie Rickenbacker. His first big race, 7 hours of mental and physical agony. He didn't hope to win. If he finished in the money, that would be enough. Other drivers crashed through the fence, but the rules of fate didn't apply to Eddie. He didn't win, but he did finish in the money. Soon he was famous as a daredevil of the tracks. By 1916, he stood 3rd among the Speed Kings. That year, he earned $40,000. Next year, he might well become America's top-ranking driver. But Eddie gave it up for a chance to become an aviator. 1917, the United States had declared war on Germany. Rickenbacker enlisted as a doughboy, hoping to get transferred to the Air Corps. It didn't work out that way. Eddie became a driver for General Pershing's staff. His request for transfer rejected. Too old, not enough education, too good a driver. It seemed he would serve out the war behind the wheel. Then Eddie met General Billy Mitchell, America's first great advocate of air power. Mitchell took a liking to the young speed demon. He pulled a few strings and Eddie got his transfer. In that brand new officer's uniform, you were the proudest pilot in the Air Force. Your outfit was the 94th Squadron. In defiance of the enemy, you named it the Hat and the Ring Squadron. But could you, a novice, hold your own against the German aces? You soon proved that you could hold your own and more. April 1918, your first encounter with the enemy. You were flying a routine patrol when several German pilots jumped you. In a moment, there was a wild scramble in the sky as you fought for your life. Swinging behind a German plane, you lined him up in your gun sights. He peeled off, trying to escape. But you hung on, and a moment later, he went down in flames. The first kill of many. Soon you were a captain and an ace, decorated for bravery. You became commander of your squadron. A born leader, you set an example of determination and courage for your men. The 94th quickly became the outstanding group in the American Army. It led all others in bombing missions and enemy planes brought down. You were a fighting leader in the air daily, searching for Germans. Your score of victories grew steadily as the months passed. 12 Germans shot down by September 1918, 22 by October, 26 by November. In recognition of valor, more decorations for you and your men. When the war ended in November, you were America's ace of aces. Peace at last. Hands that had held guns were now outstretched in friendship, and with peace, thoughts of the future. You would not go back to automobile racing. You had learned where you belonged. Your future was in aviation. To Detroit, in 1919, went Eddie Rickenbacker after his discharge from the Army. With financial backing, he began the manufacture of automobiles. Sternly realistic, he knew aviation was then still in its infancy. Somehow, he would get back into flying later on. Right now, he wanted to make money. His was the first American stock car to use four-wheel brakes. Newly married, he seemed slated for success. But his car was too advanced for the public, and the company failed. Eddie took a job selling automobiles. But the United States did not forget her ace of aces. Eddie Rickenbacker was the most decorated flyer of the First World War. Now, with President Herbert Hoover looking on, he received the most highly prized decoration of all, the Congressional Medal of Honor, a proud moment for Captain Eddie, his wife, and sons. There was another proud moment when Eddie was named Divisional Sales Manager of the General Motors Corporation. He worked hard, gained the trust of his superiors. But Eddie still loved planes. And in 1933 came the chance to go back into aviation. At that time, Eastern was a run-down operation. Against the advice of friends, Eddie took over and set to work reorganizing the airline. He was constantly traveling, flying the routes, revamping the operation from top to bottom. His knowledge of flying and instinct for leadership came into play. As he had inspired his men of the old 94th Squadron, so now he inspired his co-workers at Eastern. Hard work brought results. The line began to make money. Then, in 1938, unless Eddie bought the line, he was out. He went to Wall Street for financial backing. All he could offer as security was his name and record. But that was enough. He got the money. Ownership of the line involved even more work and greater responsibilities. New planes were ordered, the most modern the industry could produce. Rickenbacker personally supervised details of construction. A happy moment as one of the new airliners was christened by the then First Lady, Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt. The event had its humorous side. Mrs. FDR couldn't break the champagne bottle. Then tragedy in 1941. Eddie was flying south. Near Atlanta, Georgia, the airliner crashed. Rickenbacker had been trapped in the wreckage with broken ribs and gasoline burns. Although in terrible pain, he refused to be removed until the last passenger had been rescued. It was hours before he could be taken to the hospital. The doctors gave him up for lost. But as usual, the rules of fate didn't apply to Eddie. He recovered. 1942, America was at war, and again you tossed your hat into the ring. Back on your feet, you helped to boost morale on the home front. Then a visit with the boys of the new 94 Squadron. You wished them good luck and good hunting. Too old to fight, but for you, General Arnold, commander of the Army Air Force, had a more important duty, a mission to MacArthur in the Southwest Pacific. Hickam Field, Hawaii, first leg of the long flight. You talked there with the GIs while your plane was being made ready. Next stop, Canton Island, 1,800 miles away. With a good ship and a good crew, the length of the hop was nothing to worry about. Or so you thought. Far out in the Pacific, the plane went off course, lost over the ocean. Fuel tanks almost empty. You took command. When the tanks were empty, you ordered a crash landing in the ocean. Things happened quickly. Water flooded the ship as she hit the sea. You knew she'd sink fast. Only a few seconds to float the life rafts and abandon the plane. In the confusion, food and water was forgotten as you watched the plane go down. 8 men adrift on 3 rafts. For food, only a seagull, a few fish, and some rainwater. 24 days passed. 1 man died, the others were close to death. You had given up all hope when the night was lit with flares and a plane landed nearby. Rescue. It was hard to believe. They had found you in the nick of time. Another day might have been too late. They brought Eddie and his men to the Air Force base at Samoa, suffering from starvation, exhaustion, shock, covered with sores from long exposure to the sea, into the hospital for rest and treatment. Prognosis, unfavorable. But again, Eddie cheated death. 2 weeks later, he was ready to go on and complete his mission. Then, home to Washington. The Army had prepared a hero's welcome. But for Eddie, the 3 most important people on the field were his wife and sons. Drifting on that raft, he had been certain he would never see them again. It was good to be back. He had proved with his life as a pilot and airline executive that the rules of fate did not apply to him. Eddie Rickenbacker, ace of aces.
The greatest drama was brought to you by the General Tire and Rubber Company and your friendly General Tire dealer, who sells America's top quality General tires and tubes. Be with us next week at this time when the General Tire and Rubber Company and your General Tire dealer presents another chapter from the greatest drama.
Such an odd short in that it's all told in like second person. It's all like you. It's really weird. Not he, not like I, but you. So it's you who's watching this that did all that stuff under the name Eddie Rickenbacker. Really kind of fascinating. So just a reminder that we started doing the streaming show as a way to offer something away from the headlines. This was a way to kind of watch things and not respond to what's currently going on. I mean, it's been a little bit of back and forth, but so let's try to keep our comments to what's in the films and about yourself. Yeah. Anyways, so this next film is a NASA film. Great is the House of the Sun. Enjoy.
Kila, Kila, o Haleakala. Great is the House of the Sun. Kuahiwi Nani o Maui. Beautiful mountain of Maui. In old Hawaii, the mountain called Haleakala on the island of Maui was a volcano, a place of wonder and mystery. O Haleakala, House of the Sun. It is called Haleakala because it is said that here the ancient hero Maui snared the legs of the sun as its bright beams crept over the mountain and obtained a promise from the sun that he would not revolve so fast, so that there would be more light to work by and to enjoy. For this and other deeds, Maui was considered brave and wise, a kahuna, honored by all his people. Today, many new kahunas have come to the House of the Sun to try to capture new secrets from the elusive rays of light. One of these is Dr. Walter Steiger, a physicist from the University of Hawaii's Geophysics Institute. An amateur photographer, Dr. Steiger finds in this desolate landscape a dramatic subject for his camera, the silver sword, a strange leftover from a bygone age which grows nowhere else in the world. It poses regally in the lengthening rays of the sun, a sun whose history is still only dimly known. Men have always wondered about this sun, the majestic and awesome source of light and life in our solar system. Dr. Steiger's interest in all of the outdoors, in photography, and in the sun led to many questions about the atmosphere that modified the sun's bright light. What is the nature of the atmosphere above and beyond the thin veil of clouds and air that contain the moisture and dust particles that create sunsets? How will man learn about it, except by being out there? Before man can fully explore this unknown himself, he needs to acquire all the knowledge he can from the ground. Because the tropics are an ideal location for making such observations, Maui's ancient House of the Sun became the home for Dr. Steiger's new and unique observatory.
Alex Kowalski, Dr. Steiger's chief observer, readies the instrument for yet another night of observation. On moonless nights, the photometer tracks the sky in a prescribed pattern to pick up minute traces of electrical activity at great altitude, activity which produces a phenomenon known as air glow. A photomultiplier tube detects these emissions of electrical activity, converts the invisible variations in light from photons to electrons, and multiplies them to produce readings. For the scientist on top of Haleakala, sundown heralds the time for work. As the photometer probes the night sky, the readings are stored on punched paper tape or as pen and ink traces. The peaks indicate brightness, and separate readings are made for yellow, green, and red light.
Hey, Alex, look here. This is at 2130. The green here was way up around in the south, whereas the red here at the same time was way down in the south. Isn't that interesting? And then over here, the yellow, there was nothing there. It was just flat, right straight through. Very unusual.
These peaks, or enhancements, indicate high photochemical activity in the upper ionosphere. Yellow being sodium at an altitude of about 80 kilometers. Green, oxygen at 100 to 120 kilometers. And red, oxygen at 250 to 300 kilometers. But why? What causes it? What part does solar energy play in it? What interactions are taking place between the chemical elements and the electrons? To what degree are they ionized? What causes the observed ebb and flow of energy in great valleys of electrons as much as 100 kilometers deep into the ionosphere? Answers don't come easily to the research scientist, and there is a lot of careful effort behind each new piece of information. At the Geophysics Institute on the main campus in Honolulu, clues to these mysteries are painstakingly compiled. Livia Nagura works on these clues with Dr. Steiger. Her task is to translate the tracings from a night on Haleakala into numerical values with a digitizing machine. The data is punched into cards to facilitate computation. The cards are stored as a permanent record of the data for later use, but the information on them is processed through a computer to print out corrected data. That is, data which has had allowances made in it for such variables as the atmosphere and the angle of view of the observations. Now begins the task of interpretation. Walter Brown is a graduate student of astrophysics who works closely with Dr. Steiger. Here he takes the corrected readings and plots them in the form of isophotes, which make up a celestial chart of the changing patterns of light for the night of observation. Connecting lines are drawn for similar values of intensity, revealing a pattern of activity for each color studied. Isophote maps for the night of September 11 and 12, 1961, revealed unusual activity in the upper atmosphere. Seen as ever-changing light intensities, they unfold an air-glow display never seen by earthbound eye. The astronauts reported seeing similar displays from their capsules high in orbit. Until astronaut Cooper made his historic flight, air-glow studies might have been taken as merely flights of academic fantasy. But he did see it, and the pictures he took established beyond a doubt the actual existence of air-glow. But what are the relationships of these activities to other phenomena? High above Hawaii, is SYNCOM-3, a geostationary satellite which is always near the Hawaiian Islands. A continuous radio signal from the satellite is monitored by a group of researchers in the electrical engineering department of the university. As the signal passes through the ionosphere, that layer of electrons in the upper atmosphere so important to long-range radio communications, it is modified in such a way that the rotating antenna on the campus is able to receive information on the number of electrons in the ionosphere. Walter Brown's doctoral dissertation will be concerned with the relationship between the red airglow, which comes from the ionosphere, and the number of electrons in the ionosphere as measured by the satellite signal. Since the ionosphere is formed by the action of the sun's rays on the upper atmosphere, why does there seem to be an increase in electrons at night, represented by a gain in airglow brightness? Do the electrons come from outer space? Or is there some mysterious source of energy present at night which duplicates the effect of the sun's rays? So it is always in research. The answers only lead to more questions, and the path of curiosity leads further into man's opening horizons. The most important radiation for man and his life on Earth is that which comes directly from the sun. We are all aware of the effects of such radiation in the growth of plants, in the evaporation of moisture, and of course in its effects on our skin when we get too much. Much of this light is absorbed by the atmosphere. Otherwise, life would be impossible in its burning rays. But what about its behavior in the near vacuum of outer space? Some of the questions about what is happening beyond our atmosphere can be investigated within the laboratory. Dr. Kenichi Watanabe, another physicist, has been doing this for several years in his laboratory at the Geophysics Institute. He became interested in the effects of radiation in the gases of the upper atmosphere while working on the early rocket programs with the Navy and Air Force, because there was then so little knowledge with which to interpret the results of these early space probes. At the university, he is now able to pursue these studies more fully along the lines of his own interest.
Extreme ultraviolet radiation from the sun contributes to the complex chemistry of the Earth's upper atmosphere. Radiation of wavelength below 2,000 angstroms are completely absorbed in the E and F region of our atmosphere from 100 to 300 kilometers. These radiation can knock off electron and ionize, for example, the O2 molecule to O2 ion and an electron. The products of these processes recombine, for example, N2 plus with O to form NO plus, thereby producing more complex processes. As the sun moves from dawn to dusk, the absorption rate...
Dr. Watanabe's studies have concentrated on the properties of ultraviolet absorption and ionization of various gases, since in order to understand our findings on radiation activity in space, we must know more about how various substances absorb such radiation. The apparatus he uses is called a vacuum ultraviolet monochromator. In it, he recreates the conditions that might be expected in space. By systematically subjecting samples of selected gases to a range of ultraviolet frequencies, he can measure the transmission of ultraviolet light that passes through to a photomultiplier tube. The ultraviolet light is generated in this helium chamber at a pressure of approximately 1/10 atmosphere and passes through a slit where the pressure is further reduced by a series of vacuum pumps. Light of wavelength from 2,000 angstrom units to 600 angstroms is then passed through the sample gas. Various species of atmospheric and planetary gases are tested. The amount of absorption is measured by the photomultiplier tube and reads out in amplified form on a graph. Fred Matsunaga, a graduate student working on his PhD degree, is collecting the data. Much of science is not spectacular forays into the unknown, but accumulations of a lot of little facts that grow into bigger understandings. Dr. Watanabe's work is a good example of how much laboratory work, by painstaking research, develops the basic knowledge which helps to direct actual space probes. At Goddard Space Flight Center near Washington, D.C., is another University of Hawaii scientist whose mind is occupied with the sun and its ultraviolet radiation. Dr. Howard McAllister's work is in the field of high-altitude spectroscopy, the recording of the characteristics of ultraviolet radiation in an environment unhampered by the effects of our atmosphere on the sun's rays. A pioneer in his field, Dr. McAllister's research has led to his design for a new and sophisticated instrument which, when functioning in space, will provide far more accurate data than possible with less precise equipment. While Dr. McAllister is at Goddard, his colleague at the university, Dr. William Simmons, is continuing work begun when scientific space probes were in their infancy.
One of the flights, about 10 years ago, that was made by Dr. Howard McAllister at the University of Colorado. The instrument used to obtain these data is right here. It's a relatively simple-looking instrument compared to present-day standards. Optically, it consists of a slit here, an entrance slit, a concave grating which does the same function as a prism, and a recording device in the form of a film. The sun's rays irradiate the slit, which in turn irradiates the concave grating and disperses the spectral features along the film here. Now the recording of that flight, or those flights, are right here. Now you'll notice that the films consist of a white portion with dark lines, and these dark lines, you'll notice, are squeezed together, or they have the appearance of being squeezed together. And what we'd like to do to get better data is to be able to separate these.
This experience stimulated Howard McAllister to seek better means of obtaining data. Enclosed in this heavy vacuum chamber is the laboratory model of the new instrument, the high-resolution scanning spectrophotometer. Such developments don't just happen. Many years of study and design went into the building of this device. Dr. McAllister carefully studied all of the available technology before attempting its design. Theoretical computations were made of the resolving power of all combinations of instruments. Later, these calculations were compared with actual measurements of available components. The principle of the spectrophotometer is based upon a special diffraction grating called an eshell. Light rays passing through a slit and reflecting from a collimating mirror strike the polished surfaces of a series of microscopic steps on the eshell and are reflected in a spectral distribution to a similar grating, the echelette, in which the steps are even more microscopic in size. Thus, the sun's spectrum can be spread more precisely, permitting far more accurate measurements than were heretofore possible. Once the laboratory instrument was assembled, the design and construction of its intricate components had to be carefully tested and evaluated to ensure their reliable functioning in the little-known environment of space. As testing continued, Dr. Simmons and his staff began the adaptation of a purely laboratory instrument into a device which must function perfectly by itself, controlled only by signals reaching thousands of miles through space. The results of the laboratory experiments, considerations of weight and space limitations, selection of materials and electronic components, all entered into the final design. Designs became components as engineers and craftsmen carefully created the many intricate parts and assembled them into the final model. When Dr. McAllister's instrument is finally in space, it will yield many times as much data as his first simple experiments. Man's knowledge of his universe is constantly increasing through the cooperative research of these men in their studies of the sun's radiation. Perhaps man will someday find application of this knowledge to his practical problems, such as those in communications, weather, space flight, and exploration. But basic research is not conducted with these aims in mind. Rather, it grows out of the natural desire of man to learn, his need to know about the mysteries of living things, the earth on which we live, and the space around us. Great is the house of the sun.
Back when I was beginning to work on some of the NASA digitizing stuff, I went to Greenbelt, the Goddard Space Center. The entrance is right next to a Kmart. And I drove in and parked, and I was like, this is like looks like a community college. Like, the campus really hadn't changed since when this film was made. But God, when was this? This was like early 2000s, maybe. And so myself and the other person from the Internet Archive, we were meeting different people and talking about the content that they had, of which most of it had already gone to the National Archives, where it was supposed to go. And we were trying to figure out, like, well, we just got a tour. So we got to go to where they have the NASA press releases. And it was this kind of fake control room that had a big flat screen TV. And I was leaning against this silver column and it moved. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this is really ad hoc set up. But the coolest thing I saw at the time, this was super amazing, was basically they had a projection of the Earth that was rotating, and it was updated with all the satellite data that they had for everything that was happening on the ground. So you could see things like where all the forest fires were on the planet, and where all the volcanic eruptions were. And they also were able to show where algae blooms were and where there were dust storms. And so you could see what was happening. Dust storms in Africa would get caught into the Gulf Stream, and they would make their way over and deposit into the Gulf of Mexico. And it was really fascinating. That was really kind of cool. And at the time, it was, the data was not real time. It was like within 24 hours, and different satellites were reporting data at different times. And so it was really pretty cool. Hey, so thank you guys for tuning in. And also thank you for the coffee. There was a bunch of people that gave me coffee. So Jeremy, thank you. Alex, thank you. Mike, thank you so much. Coffee is the one thing that keeps us going here at AV Geeks. We have lots of films. Obviously, also a 16mm film leader keeps us going, and cables keep us going. But as far as us physically, coffee's what we want. All right, this is something that was transferred, and it looked like half of it was not completely transferred right, but you'll bear with me on it. This is from a big batch of films, of little tiny short films that I got from someone in Portland, Oregon, who got them from a former TV engineer at a local ABC affiliate. And so there was a bunch of ABC shorts on here, and among other things. So 1970s TV spots. Enjoy.
You know, a clean mouth and fresh breath, they're beautiful. You get them by brushing. But when you can't brush, you can still get that just brushed freshness with Dentine. Dentine doesn't replace brushing, but it helps clean your mouth and freshen your breath when you can't brush. You know something? If we weren't such a good chewing gum, we might even be in the toothpaste business. Dentine. Regular, cool spearmint, cool peppermint.
Last month, Webster McGee had a dull job and a boring wife. But that was last month.
I'm a jewel thief.
You're a jewel thief.
In a world of thieves, I wanted to be an honest one.
He's got style, man. Ryan O'Neal, Jacqueline Bissett, and Warren Oates. The thief who came to dinner. Watch out for Matt Helm.
Get me 88mm mortars.
International merchants in weapons and murder.
Find the man that killed my father.
Get out of it, Matt, or they might send someone to look for you. You've been a nuisance, Helm. Tony Franciosa is Matt Helm.
Aunt Lottie, I don't like this place.
Are you all right? Jeremiah! Jeremiah!
I'd be all right, lad. Don't fret.
This is Carl Malden.
And Michael Douglas.
Every Thursday night, San Francisco provides the
Census of Agriculture came by mail. I answered the question. I'm mailing it back. I like it.
I like it too!
Now TWA gives everybody a chance to fly free for life.
You know, if I win, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to London.
Rome! Announcing TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes. 10,000 free trips, plus the grand prize, a free trip for two every year of your life.
Or anywhere TWA flies.
I'll never win. I'll never win.
TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes.
I won! You're gonna like us, TWA. You're gonna...
Now TWA gives everybody a chance to fly free for life.
You know, if I win, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to London.
Rome! Announcing TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes. 10,000 free trips, plus the grand two every year of your life.
Or anywhere TWA flies.
I'll never win. I'll never win.
TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes.
I won! You're gonna like us, TWA. You're gonna...
Now TWA gives everybody a chance to fly free for life.
You know, if I win, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to London.
Rome!
Announcing TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes. 10,000 free trips, plus the grand prize, a free trip for two every year of your life.
Or anywhere TWA flies.
I'll never win. I'll never win.
TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes.
I won!
You're gonna like us, TWA. You're gonna
1969 Census of Agriculture?
Yes, it was on TV. Census by mail.
No census taker?
No, we fill it out when we want to.
No census taker.
It's private this way. I like it.
I like it too.
I like it too!
'Census of Agriculture came by mail. I answered the questions. I'm mailing it back. I like it.
I like it too!
1969 Census of Agriculture?
Yes, it was on TV. Census by mail.
No census taker?
No, we fill it out when we want to.
No census taker.
It's private this way. I like it.
I like it too.
I like it too!
Is the slow speed of trucking driving down your profits? Get airspeed at truck rates with Eastern's Cost Cutter containers. After all, trucking high-density freight over 500 miles can put you in a jam. We'll bet Eastern can match truck rates and raise you 30,000 feet at 500 miles an hour. Imagine rates comparable to truck rates at airspeed everywhere we fly in the U.S. So why wait? Let us show you how Cost Cutters can cut your costs. Call us today. Is the slow speed of trucking driving down your profits? Get airspeed at truck rates with Eastern's Cost Cutter containers. After all, trucking high-density freight over 500 miles can put you in a jam. We'll bet Eastern can match truck rates and raise you 30,000 feet at 500 miles an hour. Imagine rates comparable to truck rates at airspeed everywhere we fly in the U.S. So why wait? Let us show you how Cost Cutters can cut your costs. Call us today.
A letter from your sister, the county paper, and this.
This?
Says 1969 Census of Agriculture.
Then that's what it is. 1969 Census of Agriculture. A census form for us to fill out.
I guess I'll wait for the census taker.
We'll be our own census taker. It was on TV.
5 years ago, there was a census taker came around.
Yes, and killed the whole afternoon when you had work to do.
She was real smart. Pleasant girl, too.
Well, we can fill out the census form after supper or whenever you want to. I like it.
Bet she'd be wearing a miniskirt this year.
This year, our census taker will be wearing your clothes. I like it.
You mean we have to answer all of those questions?
Oh, we already know the answers. I like the census by mail. It's private and convenient. I like the idea.
I like it, too.
I like it too!
Is the slow speed of trucking driving down your profits? Get airspeed at truck rates with Eastern's Cost Cutter containers. After all, trucking high-density freight over 500 miles can put you in a jam. We'll bet Eastern can match truck rates and raise you 30,000 feet at 500 miles an hour. Imagine rates comparable to truck rates at airspeed everywhere we fly in the U.S. So why wait? Let us show you how Cost Cutters can cut your costs. Call us today.
Martix introduces the goodnight sheet. Peaceful patterns like Highland Gardens, each carefully designed in no iron DuPont, Dacron, and combed cotton to look as nice and restful as it feels. Martix, you can tell the difference with your eyes closed.
Is the slow speed of trucking driving down your profits? Get airspeed at truck rates with Eastern's Cost Cutter containers. After all, trucking high-density freight over 500 miles can put you in a jam. We'll bet Eastern can match truck rates and raise you 30,000 feet at 500 miles an hour. Imagine rates comparable to truck rates at airspeed everywhere we fly in the U.S. So why wait? Let us show you how Cost Cutters can cut your costs. Call us today.
"1969 Census of Agriculture"?
Yes, it was on TV. Census by mail.
No census taker?
No, we fill it out when we want to.
No census taker.
It's private this way. I like it.
I like it too.
Now TWA gives everybody a chance to fly free for life.
You know, if I win, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to London. No, yes. Rome!
Announcing TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes. 10,000 free trips, plus the grand prize, a free trip for two every year of your life.
Or anywhere TWA flies.
I'll never win. I'll never win.
TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes.
I won!
You're gonna like us, TWA. You're gonna...
1969 Census of Agriculture?
Yes, it was on TV. Census by mail.
No census taker?
No, we fill it out when we want to.
No census taker.
It's private this way. I like it.
I like it too.
Now TWA gives everybody a chance to fly free for life.
You know, if I win, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to London. No, yes. Rome!
Announcing TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes. 10,000 free trips, plus the grand prize, a free trip for two every year of your life.
Or anywhere TWA flies.
I'll never win. I'll never win.
TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes.
I won!
You're gonna like us, TWA. You're gonna...
Now TWA gives everybody a chance to fly free for life.
You know, if I win, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to London. No, yes. Rome!
Announcing TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes. 10,000 free trips, plus the grand prize, a free trip for two every year of your life.
Or anywhere TWA flies.
I'll never win. I'll never win.
TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes.
I won!
You're gonna like us, TWA. You're gonna...
Now TWA gives everybody a chance to fly free for life.
You know, if I win, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to London. No, yes. Rome!
Announcing TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes. 10,000 free trips, plus the grand prize, a free trip for two every year of your life.
Or anywhere TWA flies.
I'll never win. I'll never win.
TWA's Win the World Sweepstakes.
I won!
You're gonna like us, TWA. You're gonna...
Martix introduces the goodnight sheet. Peaceful patterns like Highland Gardens, each carefully designed in no iron DuPont Dacron and combed cotton to look as nice and restful as it feels. Martix, you can tell the difference with your eyes closed. Martix introduces the goodnight sheet. Peaceful patterns like Highland Gardens, each carefully designed in no iron DuPont Dacron and combed cotton to look as nice and restful as it feels. Martix, you can tell the difference with your eyes closed.
A letter from your sister, the county paper, and this.
This?
Says 1969 Census of Agriculture.
Then that's what it is. 1969 Census of Agriculture. A census form for us to fill out.
Yes, I'll wait for the census taker.
We'll be our own census taker. It was on TV.
5 years ago, there was a census taker came around.
Yes, and killed the whole afternoon when you had work to do.
She was real smart. Pleasant girl, too.
Well, we can fill out the census form after supper or whenever you want to. I like it.
Bet she'd be wearing a miniskirt this year.
This year, our census taker will be wearing your clothes. I like it.
You mean we have to answer all of those questions?
Oh, we already know the answers. I like the census by mail. It's private and convenient. I like the idea.
I like it, too.
I like it
So that's what happens when you get a big box, and in the box is multiple copies of the same thing. So I am happy that you appreciate the 1969 census taker PSA as much as I do, or maybe you don't. But I appreciate you letting me go on with it. Anyways, thanks for tuning in today. Very much appreciate your comments and your eyeballs, and we'll be back on Monday, and we'll be watching some more films. Stuart, you had requested a film on skiing that was too long to show, and I couldn't find a shorter one. So at some point, I will schedule a time to show that. I can't always fulfill requests. Sometimes I can't find the film, sometimes I don't have the film, and sometimes it just doesn't fit with what's going on. So you can make requests, but I won't always be able to fulfill them, so don't be disappointed. Anyways, we will see you again next week. Oh, duh. I'm doing another show in like less than an hour with the Hunt Library with an expert professor, and he had requested, do I have any films about capitalism, or do I have any films about bicycles? And I was like, you know what? I've got both. So we're gonna watch films about industry, capitalism, free market economy, and bicycles. So that's at 3 o'clock. It's the same place that you're watching it now. So give yourself a break, have some delicious lunch food, and fold some laundry, and then come back, and we'll see you then. Everybody have a great hour or so, and if I don't see you, maybe I'll see you on Monday. Everybody take care. All right. Take care.